Day Friday, Chapter 10, their fourth day. Friday morning proved relatively uneventful, apart from Tar's unexpected wake-up present. Gross. The kids, having learnt from last night's outrageous dining experience, once again came prepared, this time wearing full protective rain gear to breakfast. Everything they wore was bright yellow, from their long yellow rain caps to their yellow oilskin coats, yellow waders with black suspenders, and even yellow rubber wellies. "That's a great color, Tar," Dad complimented. "Looks good on you. Goes with your tan." "Thanks," Tarzan responded without looking up, deeply engrossed in his cereal bowl. Dad was going to say something about it being rude wearing hats at the kitchen table, but thought better of it. The kids had been through enough. "How's my melodious monk this morning?" he teased his eldest, making clever reference to his taste in music. "I'm fine, thanks, Daddy." "Me too, thanks for asking," piped up Hubert with a bit of cheek. "Just to let you know," continued Dad, "there will be some repairs going on outside sometime today. The septic tank lid is cracked and we'll be replacing it. So please be careful if you're playing in that area." Dad paused, having second thoughts. "In fact, better to stay away from there altogether, at least until we're done." A multi-chorused, "Yes, Dad," came the mumbled response. Peeking out the kitchen window into the garden beyond, "Doubt you'll need those coats, though," Dad spoke, mostly to himself. "Looks really warm out." It was indeed a warm, muggy day outside. The three youngsters had hastily chucked their dishes into the sink in an effort to avoid wet conversation with Kruger, shouted a "Thanks for breakfast," dumped their rain gear on the foyer floor, and headed straight out to play. "Tag, you're it!" Hugo pounded Tar on the arm as soon as they reached the courtyard. "Ow!" complained Tarzan. His reflexes, however, well honed to this timeless game, snaked out, tagging Melody on her back with lightning speed. "Tag, you're it!" Melody, not missing a beat either, reacted just as quickly, nabbing her brother before he could escape. "You're it!" Hugo got Tarzan again. "You're it!" Tar continued the circle. "You're it!" Tap. "You're it!" Slap. "You're it!" Hit. "You're it!" Whack. "You're it!" Thump. "You're it!" Pound. "You're it!" Wallop. "You're it!" The monotonous circuit escalated, getting more and more aggressive. Round and round it went, changing direction just as fast, never getting old. Sigh. Give it a rest already. Eye roll. Finally, the ring broke. "Nope, you're it." Tarzan raced away after paying Hugo back with a satisfying bash on the upper arm. Huey being surprised by Tar's unexpected maneuver, Melody took advantage of the distraction, running away in the other direction. "Oh, bollocks," uttered the slowest runner of the three. By the time he recovered from indecision, Tar and Mel had long disappeared around opposite corners of the stable. "I hate this game," Hugo muttered to himself, setting off in the direction of his sister. Mel and Tar bumped into each other on the other side of the barn. "Are you it?" he asked. "Nope. You?" "Nah, not a chance." Chuckling together, they ran around the side of another nearby outbuilding, certain Hugo would never catch up with them. "Guys, where are you?" They could hear him shouting from somewhere in the distance. Peeking together around the building, they spotted poor Huey puffing and going in the wrong direction. Grinning with great satisfaction, they quietly spied on him for some time. "Quick!" Tarzan suddenly whispered. "Follow me." Melody stayed right behind him, both moving stealthily so as not to attract Huey's attention. "'S not fair!" They could hear him complaining uselessly from afar. He might as well have been miles away. Snickering to each other, they cruelly snuck back to the main house, it wandering hopelessly between sheds and outbuildings. Hiding close together on the other side of the concrete steps, they stopped and listened. Nothing, other than their hearts thumping adrenaline. Tar breathed in the fragrance of Mel's nice-smelling shampoo. His tummy went kind of funny. He was enjoying the exhilaration of being in close proximity with her, spending some more alone time uninterrupted by her brother. But then he realized his tummy dance had nothing to do with romance. It was actually because he needed to use the loo. Those so-called butterflies in his belly were about to unleash some fury. Must have been Kruger's cooking. "Oh man, can you wait for me here? I gotta go back inside, Mel," he explained really romantic-like. "Need to take a dump real bad." Glancing down at him, Mel wrinkled her nose, unimpressed. Didn't need to know that. Thinking he'd heard voices, Hubert sped up around the corner to the east side of the house, completely forgetting about repairs going on with the septic tank. Bent on catching up with his sister, he almost didn't see the deep hole in the ground just a few quick feet in front of him. The cracked concrete lid had been slid off to one side. Luckily, he had just enough time to come to a rough, skidding stop, wafts of unpleasant odors licking up at his face, taunting him downwards. Unfortunately, with the sheer momentum of Hubert's determined advance, his sudden arrest just wasn't quite good enough to keep him from teetering back and forth, waving vainly for critical, desperately essential balance. With absolute horror and in devastatingly slow motion, he realized he was going to fall inevitably into the yawning chasm, a foul entrance to hell with cackling demons gleefully calling his name. "No!" screamed Hubert, eyes wide with futile panic, then immediately remembered to close his mouth before he regretted it for life. Splooch! Down into the sloppy mire he landed, coming up to his chest in his beloved family's nasty business. Trousers down to his ankles, Tarzan shuffled about on the toilet upstairs, anxious to finish his business so he could get back to Mel and the fun he was missing out on. When he was ready for final inspection before flushing, he stood up and looked into the bowl. As you do. He was very impressed. "Fear not. There will be no discourteous description, lest it put anyone off that nice hot bowl of lumpy red kidney bean chili one might be thinking of enjoying later on." "Nasty," Tarzan cheerfully appraised himself, then quickly flushed the morbid contents out of sight, forgot to wash his hands, and tromped down the stairs. Hugo shuddered, the majority of his body submerged in the tepid, murky liquid. Knowing he would definitely die if he dared breathe, he also knew chances were high he'd die if he didn't. So, hopelessly straining oxygen from noxious gases betwixt tightly pursed lips, he tried to figure out how the heck he was supposed to get himself out of this horrific predicament. Hugo stifled a sniffle of dismay. He was just not having a good week. Thankfully, however, the septic tank wasn't all that deep. The concrete walls, covered in dark slime, were closed in around him, the opening a few feet above his head. If he could just get a decent grip on that large pipe gaping directly in front of him, he might be able to reach up to the opening of the tank and climb himself out. He studied the mouth of the pipe, more foul smells drifting from deep within, as if it were a petrified boa constrictor boasting a raunchy case of halitosis. Just then, an ominous sound came from way back inside the belly of the calcified serpent. A low, tubular, flushing, rushing noise. Hubert froze. It was just too much for him. With salty tears already crystallized on his cheeks, his face locked in perma-dismay, He watched in weak surrender as the pipe emptied its untimely deluge before him into the holding tank. The force of the pour caused unwelcome speckling all over his face, wet samples of what vividly reminded him of the nice meal he and his family had all shared just the night before. Disgusting. Mel waited out front, innocently twirling a wee daisy between her fingertips, biding her time until Tarzan reappeared. Leaning against the sun-baked stone wall of the house, she closed her eyes and allowed its deep heat to absorb through the thin fabric of her top, warming her bony little back. Sundry bird call from near and afar floated down and settled lightly upon her gentle soul. Twee songbirds, flitting among distant treetops, echoed each other's intricate melodies. Brown, long-beaked curlews were twirring, orange-beaked oyster-catchers pip-pipping, and lapwings, like children with a slide whistle, two-witting their tubular and playful call. The comforting drone of a bumblebee meandered by in the heat, the sun rejuvenating the fresh skin on her face. Relaxing thoughts soothed her mind while she caressed the pads of her fingers with the soft velvety petals of the flower. This was one of those blissful summer moments worth savoring. Melody breathed in deep, then let out a long, slow, contented sigh. Tarzan suddenly came crashing outside from within the house. Obliviously, he banged open the front door as loudly as possible against the concrete guardrails of the upper landing. "Has he found you yet?" he called, scouting the courtyard and then peering down towards his waiting companion. "No, but he will, with the noise you're making," she answered, opening her eyes in time to observe Tar hopping up and descending atop the wide, sloping railing. "You were gone for such a long time, I thought maybe he'd used the thigh door and found you inside." Jumping nimbly to the ground, he skipped towards Mel. "Nah, I was upstairs doing a number 2. Why would he be with me?" Mel grimaced, pushing herself up from her temporary haven against the side of the house, and then tossed the pretty flower at his shirt. Tar caught the flying flower at the last second and then faked a throwback. Mel flinched with a giggle, throwing her hands over her head to protect herself. Tarzan moved in quickly and made to rub the daisy in her face and in her hair. Mel resisted, protesting merrily. She pushed him away gently and then fled, Tarzan laughing and running swiftly after her. "Come back here, you! I've got a tasty daisy salad you're gonna love!" After having made many attempts of grabbing hold of the slick septic tank pipe to climb up and out, only to slip and splash right back into the putrid mire, Hubert had finally managed to succeed in pulling himself out. A wobbly step away, he stood on the grass, dripping with stinking human refuse. His body was physically exhausted, his spirit weary and broken. Unmoving and blinking in the bright daylight, he needed a moment just to breathe. He couldn't believe he was at last free from that suffocating Hades. Somewhere in his dazed subconscious, the priority of a shower lurked. But at the moment, he felt little more than an incapacitated victim, a fragile shell, a useless husk. Turning to gaze down at the wretched cavern from whence he'd come, faint cheerful shouts coming his direction from the front of the house attempted to push aside the fog in his brain. Just then, Tarzan and Melody came racing around the corner, shouting hilariously, having the time of their lives. "Ha ha ha ha! Hee 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 hee!" Hugo, still completely in shock, turned slowly back round again to face the onrushing duo. "Hi, Huey," his sister greeted sweetly, barely slowing. Tar, intent on catching his pretty prey, hardly noticed his best bud just standing there. As he ran past Hugo, he instinctively threw out his hand and gave him a nice solid whap on his shoulder. "Tag, you're still it!" he hollered as he disappeared further along down the length of the house, hot on Melody's heels. Hugo felt the impact of the tag but was too weak to resist. His body spun round, limp arms flat by his sides, dead feet skating beneath him. Sloppy poops from his soiled clothes had saturated the ground where he stood, offering him no credible stability or traction. "Wake!" A piteous wail escaped his throat, his chubby carcass once again river dancing pathetically at the lip of the stink tank, before inevitably falling like a dead log, splooping straight back into the poo pond. Life sucks.